and then we will do one bhajan. Probably we'll talk a little bit. We'll do one bhajan, and then we can get started with the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Um, and I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for joining today and for reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And we'll discuss a little bit about that for those who are joining for the first time. So thank you. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham
Shri Guru
Shri Yutapadakamam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhayascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mutsamo Nasti Papatma Naparadhi Chakashana Parihare Pilajjame Kimbruve Purushottama Bhumau Skalita Padanam Bhumireva Valambanam Tvai Jata Paradhanam Tvameva Sharanam Prabhu Govinda Vallabhe Radhe Prarthaye Tvamaham Sada Padiyam Niti Janatu Govindo Mam Tvaya Saha Radha Radhita Radhesha Radhika Prana Vallabha Radha Ramana Vande Tvam Radhika Prema Nirchita. Hare Krishna. I welcome all those who have just joined. Thank you for joining for the second semester of the Bhakti Sastri class. This semester we will be completing, or we will be covering, the chapters 1 through 9 of Bhagavad Gita. And before we get started, why are we doing Bhakti Sastri? Why are we sitting here and trying to read Srila Prabhupada's books? The idea here is, in Chaitanya Charitamrita it is mentioned, Mayar Mugdha Jiva Nahi Swata Krishna Gyan Jivera Kripa Kaila Krishna Veda Puran. That the living entity who is born in this material world is completely blinded by ignorance. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. When we read that famous prayer, the import of that prayer is that um, I am born in the darkest region of ignorance. Now, some who are little new might be surprised about this. Just 1 minute, please. Sorry about that. The idea is that as the living entities are born in ignorance, how do we get knowledge? And what is the source of knowledge? And that knowledge is actually imparted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Imagine if a person is lying on the roadside with hands and feet completely tied. That person cannot have any means to untie himself of the strong ropes that bind that person. So, in the same vein, one who is born in the darkest ignorance cannot have spiritual knowledge on their own. And therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead spoke Bhagavad Gita to his friend Arjuna 5,000 years ago. Apparently, Arjuna was put into a delusion or a depression about the situation that he was thrown into, and he asks Krishna for advice. And it is mentioned how Krishna, speaking to Arjuna, targeted the entire world for um, giving out the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. And you are all so fortunate, my friends, and those I'll be making friends over the period of this particular semester. You're so fortunate that you are able to read Bhagavad Gita in this august assembly of devotees. Bhagavad Gita in of itself is a very clear document, but because there has been certain, because of the frequency, mismatch of the frequency where Krishna is speaking from the platform of absolute truth and the receiver is not there, there could be certain mismatch. And that mismatch actually has caused some confusion. And Bhagavad Gita seems to be a very philosophically rigorous, excruciatingly technical at certain point of time, and at some places completely impractical. But please understand that Bhagavad Gita is as relevant to Arjuna for solving his problems 5,000 years ago as it is today, that each and every one of us are perplexed by the varieties of problems and unexpected situations that we encounter in this world. But please, by reading this Bhagavad Gita, you will get such immeasurable strength and immeasurable solace to deal with the material existence. There are many Bhagavad Gitas and many translations. In fact, if you look into the market, there are hundreds of translations. For those who are already members of ISKCON, there is no need or reason to even talk about why we read Bhagavad Gita as it is. But for those who are really new, and then why are we reading Bhagavad Gita as it is in comparison to other books or other translations of Bhagavad Gita? One of the things that is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita is that one has to understand the Bhagavad Gita without it being tainted by the personally motivated interpretations that can come about. It is so easy for a particular person to use any means to justify their own philosophy, and Bhagavad Gita, unfortunately, is not exempt from that kind of mistaken situation in life. Let me give an example. Um, a person who is very addicted to alcoholic beverages, all you need is a particular occasion to actually consume the alcoholic beverages. The occasion could be that we have the celebration of the birthday of a friend, and the day was supposed to be meant to be celebrating the birthday of your friend, but actually that excuse, that occasion is used as an excuse. So the idea here is that many people who write translations of Bhagavad Gita might have their own reason of why they are writing, and that frankly doesn't reflect the intent with which Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. And that's the reason why, in spite of having hundreds of thousands of Bhagavad Gitas or their translations, this book is recommended because this words of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who translated this Bhagavad Gita, has followed a strict disciplic succession by understanding the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and imparting to us in that line. And the proof is in the pudding, because once this Bhagavad Gita was published, and I'm pretty sure by far this will be billions of copies ahead in terms of the other books or other Gita translations that have been published. So each purport, each word of our book that we are going to read carries the essence that is distilled from the Guru Parampara. And so please do take time to read and reflect on the writings that Srila Prabhupada gave us. And before we go ahead, one housekeeping thing I've been asked is, if you have questions, we will start off the reading of Bhagavad Gita. We'll probably complete like halfway through the chapter, and then we will take questions. Your questions can either be in the WhatsApp group, where you can write your question, and either Sirisha Mataji or somebody can read those questions, or you can type it in the chat itself in the Zoom call. So you have those two options, and then we can take the question and answers. I'll call for the question and answers. For those who are done few semesters, they are relatively familiar. But for those who have just started this semester, our goal of Bhakti Sastri is to read, understand existence by reading Prabhupada's books. Ultimately, we might get a Bhakti Sastri degree, which is the goal, and which you will get, don't get me wrong. It merely serves the purpose of using this platform to discover the teachings of the Supreme Lord, and more importantly, to apply it to our lives. If you ask a police officer about certain rules and regulations of the police department, they can tell it. They can tell pretty much instantaneously, because more often than not, they live those rules. They follow those rules and they implement those rules most of the times. Let's not get there right now. We can debate back and forth. But nevertheless, in the same vein, to read these teachings and imbibe it in our lives will be the success of actually having Bhakti Shastri. So that's the spiritual aspect. Now let's come to the practical aspects. We are going to cover 9 chapters, chapter 1 through chapter 9 in this semester. It will be about 4 to 4.5 months. If you read even 15 minutes every single day, which is like 2.5 pages to 3 pages every single day. You should be in a well placed position to understand this and write exam. There will be homeworks in between. The homeworks mainly in the past we have had homeworks count for 30 marks. Please submit your homeworks on time. There will be points deducted for not submitting on time, and that would be a misfortune, because when you submit your homeworks on time, then you are assured of 30 marks. They are in your bag. And then the exam is usually for 70 marks, out of which you need to have at least 50% out of 75, which is 35 marks to pass the exam. So 65 marks combining both exam and homework will be the passing. Um, and the exam date has been tentatively announced, and mostly that is going to be the date. But given the strange times that we live in, please don't curse us in case we seek some flexibility in changing those dates. And usually once or twice it does happen. What else? What else? Are there? And then please write down your questions, and then we can get started. We'll do the kirtan a little later, Mataji. So we'll get started with the first verse of the first chapter. Perfect. Thank you. So we'll start with the first verse and first chapter, and usually I call out at random. So please forgive me if everybody cannot get a chance to read. The way we are going to do it is, in the class we would have the whole class do the Sanskrit once I do the Sanskrit, and then the translation would be done by one particular person. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually asking one devotee to do the Sanskrit with me and translation, and then we can move to the next devotee. Now, all might not get a chance to read, so please tolerate as we go along. Usually, yeah, yeah. All right, if you can just project, I would actually congratulate and ask Harimohana Mataji from Japan to read. She got initiated on Radhashtami Day. So please read I'll read the Sanskrit, and then you can read the translation. Is that okay, Mataji?
Hare Krishna. Okay, Danut Pranam. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So please repeat after me. Dhritarashtra Uvacha.
Dhritarashtra Vacha.
Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre.
Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre.
Samaveta Yuyutsavaha.
Samaveta Yuyutsavaha.
Mamaka Pandavaschaiva.
Mamaka Pandavashaiva.
Kimakurvata Sanjaya.
Kimakurvata Sanjaya.
Translation.
Okay. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Before I forget, I also want to welcome a brand of young warriors, young adults who have joined Bhakti Sastri reading group with us. So I welcome all the devotees and young adults at ISV, and mostly at ISV. I believe it's Avanish, it's Anushri, Anshu, Abhijit also joined, maybe. So anyway, thank you. You can just, the parents can type in the name of their kids in the chat, please, and then we can definitely acknowledge as we move along. So the first verse of Bhagavad Gita, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva Kima Kurdavata Sanjaya. Here, the situation was that the soldiers of both the armies, the Pandavas and Kauravas, they assembled together at Kurukshetra to fight. A little history into the story, that we all know that Pandavas and Kauravas were actually not the Pandavas so much, but the Kauravas were really like hating Pandavas. Sorry to use the word, but that was exactly the intent. Amongst them, Duryodhana was jealous of the Pandavas' power, the Pandavas' opulence, and he had this envy burning deeply within the heart. And he tried his best to kill Pandavas. And when that didn't work out, when both of them came of age, Dhritarashtra, knowing that Yudhishthira was very popular, he divided the kingdom into two parts. The most flourishing part he gave it to his son, and the most barren and wasted part he gave it to the Pandavas. But Pandavas, by grace of Krishna, they built such a beautiful, prosperous kingdom in that barren land, and they performed the Rajasuya sacrifice. And we know the story of how the Kauravas went to the Rajasuya sacrifice, and they were literally burning up with envy, seeing the opulence and might of the Pandavas, and how Pandavas lost their kingdom in a gambling match, and how the Pandavas fulfilled their terms of 12 years in the forest and 1 year incognito, and how they came back and they said, now, give us our kingdom back. And Duryodhana was completely against that idea. And we know that famous saying that I will not give even an inch of land that can fit a needle. At that point of time, there was a lot of peace efforts. One of the common questions people have against Bhagavad Gita is, what is this book? And which sort of God is this? That he actually is encouraging war and this, random killing. Because please understand, the modern world is overrun by atheism. And if people are using every single excuse
let's go.
please unmute yourself if you're not. Thank you. Please mute yourself rather. Thank you. So they say Bhagavad Gita, why is it that God is encouraging war? What sort of God is he that he's encouraging war? But please understand that Yudhishthir actually sent a messenger to the Pandavas. And he said, please, let's not have this war. And then, the beauty of Krishna, that he said, oh Yudhishthir Maharaj, I will go on your behalf and I will try to secure peace. And let's avoid this war that is going to annihilate an entire race of Kshatriyas. And let me come to the numbers a little bit later. Yudhishthir said to Krishna, Krishna, Duryodhana is an envious person. He is uncultured. He will humiliate you. Please don't go. Please don't go to the peace efforts that are being made underway. What was Krishna's answer to that? Krishna said, oh Yudhishthir, if I don't go to Hastinapur and try for a peaceful formula, the whole world will blame you for starting or instigating this war. And when I go, and Krishna knew that he would be not successful. Here is the supreme absolute truth, who placed the reputation of his devotees ahead of himself. People in the modern context, oh my God, if I go there and then if I don't secure peace, then people will think I'm a loser. Or he was not like that. Krishna said, I'll go just to protect your reputation. And he goes. And then Duryodhana was so unfortunate would be the word, that he actually tried to capture Krishna and put him in prison. He thought, if I capture Krishna and put him in prison, then the Pandavas will have no backbone, no effort, no nothing to stand on, so they will surrender. And unfortunately, that didn't work out. And then it was just sure, it was inevitable that there would be war. Because of that, both Duryodhana and Arjuna, they started collecting armies. And Pandavas were able to collect 7 divisions, or in Sanskrit, the word is Akshauhini, 7 Akshauhinis. And then the Kauravas were able to collect 11. And it is mentioned that 3.94 million soldiers and chariots, elephants, weapons, they were all assembled in this place of pilgrimage. It was not a small sight to behold. As you can only imagine, like at least 30, 40, 50 square miles of place being occupied by soldiers, and the elephants were neighing, the horses were neighing, there were chariots, and it was a pretty grand scene that we are entering into as we read the next one. Avanish, please read the next verse with me.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Mate.
Some devotees, Ujjwala Mataji is asking, we are not covering introduction.
So, introduction is, Srila Prabhupada wrote the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita as a separate booklet before Bhagavad Gita was published. And when Bhagavad Gita as it is was published, both were combined. We usually skip it because we are reading the substance which is there inside. So we don't need to again go through the introduction. But having said that, if you want to read introduction, by all stretch of imagination, please read. Ujjwala Samati says Zoom is stopped. Is Zoom stopped? We are able to see, right? Everybody is able to see.
Yes, true.
Perfect. Thank you. So, perfect. Okay. So, if you want to read introduction, please do by all stretch of imagination. There are really valuable points in the introduction, and then we can definitely discuss. But for the sake of practicality, we won't cover introduction in this class, at least. Is that okay? Ujjwala Rasamataji and Sirisha Mataji, what else are the questions?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. Some devotees send their kids' names. If you want.
I'll come to that a bit. Let's cover some ground, and then we can and definitely I will do that. Okay, so can we go to the second verse, please? Avanish, you ready?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol. Kindly repeat after me. Sanjaya Uvacha.
Sanjaya Uvacha.
Drishtva tu Pandavanikam.
Drishtva tu Pandavanikam.
Vyudam Duryodhanastada.
Vyudam Duryodhanastada.
Acharyam Upasangamya.
Acharyam Upasangamya.
Raja Vachanam Abravit.
Raja Vachanam Abravit. Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhan went to his teacher and spoke the following words.
Thank you. So Duryodhana was a wonderful diplomat. His diplomacy was something that is mentioned here. On one hand, he had deep anxiety to win this war. On the other hand, he knew, I shouldn't, I'm on a shaky ground because I have grabbed the kingdom of my cousins and I'm refusing to give it back. Already many sages come to Dhritarashtra's assembly hall and they say to Dhritarashtra, your welfare lies in making peace with the Pandavas. Please don't go for this war. This war will be causing the destruction of your entire race. Nobody will survive this war, and this war is not worth it. Don't do it. And they actually also told Duryodhana, when Duryodhana was sitting there, please understand that Duryodhana had multi anxieties. One anxiety was that here was the war, and he had to make sure that he was the de facto leader of the war, even though, ironically, Duryodhana was never commander in chief of the war. For the 18 days the war happened of Mahabharat, and there were many different commanders in chief who were the leaders of the army, starting with Bhishma. Ironically, he was never the official captain or the leader of the army, but unofficially he was running around making sure that he won this war. And the second anxiety for him was that when Yudhishthir lost the match, the gambling match, and they actually were kind of caught in a bind, Dhritarashtra said to them that the gambling match or the kingdom that you won in the gambling match, we'll give it back to them. That is not proper. And the Duryodhana was like, and Shakuni, like, they put their hand, oh my God, we worked so hard to get that kingdom back. Now my old father is giving this kingdom back to them. And they had to do the gambling match again. And then they put these stipulations of 12 years. So Duryodhana had this multi-anxiety. And you can see these anxieties are coming about. He saw the army of the Pandavas, and there was little anxiety. Please understand, at the very outset, Bhagavad Gita teaches us that if a person illegally or unfairly gets somebody else's possessions, he or she will be always beset with anxieties and concerns. Because in this case, after sages told Dhritarashtra that please don't fight and make peace with the Pandavas, otherwise your kingdom is destroyed, it is mentioned in Mahabharata that Dhritarashtra lost all sleep. He barely could sleep. There was no sleep coming because he was in such anxiety. And here also, the Duryodhana, actually, his army had more number of soldiers, divisions than the Pandavas. Yet, because they were not on footing of dharma, there was always anxiety. And artificially, he thought he could claim to kind of, win. All right. Let's go with Vaishnavi. You want to do the third verse with me, please?
Yes, Prabhu.
All right. Pashyaitam Panduputranam
Pashyaitam Panduputranam
Acharya Mahatim Chamum
Acharya Mahitim Chamum
Yudam Drupada Putrena
Vyudam Drupada Putrena
Tava Shishyena Dhimata.
Tava Shishyena Dhimata.
Translation.
O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada.
Thank you. Text 4. Sachin, Hare Krishna. You can do the text 4 with me, please. I'm sorry, I'm going to call in random, so please forgive me if you. You are able to unmute yourself, Sachin? Okay, somebody has to unmute him. And then the next will be Ishwari Radha. So that way we can have, then we following is Divyangi Lalita. So we can at least have that way unmuted like that. So first is Sachin, and then Ishwari Radha, and then Divyangi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Prabhu.
Welcome. Okay. Atra Shura Maheshwasa
Atra Shura Maheshwasa
Bhimarjuna Samayudhi
Bhimarjuna Samayudhi
Yuyudhano Viratascha
Yuyudhano Viratascha
Drupadascha Maharataha.
Drupadascha Maharataha.
Translation, please.
Translation. So if you could scroll down a little bit.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Okay. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yudhana, Virata, and Drupada.
Thank you. Yeah. Next. I'll stop and explain after a few verses. Okay, text 5. Drishtaketuschekitanaha
दृष्टकेतुश्चेकितानः
Kashirajascha Viryavan
काशीराजश्च वीर्यवान्
Purujit Kunti Bojascha
पुरुजित् कुन्तिभोजश्च
Shaibhyascha Narapungavaha.
शैब्यश्च नरपुङ्गवा. There are also great heroic powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kasiraja, Purujit, Kuntibhoja, and Shaibya.
Text 6. And then I'll ask Amit Goswami, and then after that Priyanka Sharma. Text 6. Yudamanyuscha Vikranta
Yudamanyu Vikranta
Uttamaujaschcha Viryavan
Uttamoscha Shaviryavan
Saubhadro Draupadeyascha
Saubhadro Draupadeyascha
Sarva Eva Maharataha.
Sarva Eva Maharatha. There are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamanuja, the son of Subhadra, and the son of Draupadi. All these warriors are the great chariot fighters.
Thank you. Actually, next, I think Divyangi Mataji will read because she kind of missed reading. So, but here Duryodhana actually is spending a lot of time trying to tell about the different warriors on the battlefield or the side of the Pandavas. He starts off with Bhishma and Arjuna, and then he gives who is the son of Subhadra? You can type it in the chat. So it's mentioned here, the son of Subhadra. The son of Subhadra is Abhimanyu. Pavitra Renu Mataji. Wonderful, wonderful. And then trickier question. So then it's mentioned Draupadeyaha, the sons of Draupadi. How many were they? 5. Excellent. And the thing is, this is good. And then the next one, please. So Divyangi Lalita Mataji, my apologies. Your turn is now, and then after this is Priyanka Mataji.
Okay,
Text 6. Text 7. Thank you. Asmakam tu vishishtaye
अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये
तान् निबोध द्विजोत्तमा
तान् निबोध द्विजोत्तमा
नायका मम सैन्यस्य
नायका मम सैन्यस्य
संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते
संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते।
Translation. And next is actually Priyanka Mataji from Fremont.
But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force.
Thank you. So after this Priyanka Mataji, and then we'll go with the kids, and then we can go like that. So maybe Tejas can read the next one after this, and then maybe Ambarish. Okay. So after explaining about the different kinds of warriors that are ready to fight with him, now he starts, Duryodhana actually starts telling about his own strengths. Now please understand that Duryodhana was a first-class diplomat. And here he says, who is he addressing here? He's addressing Dronacharya, yes or yes? So he says, so what is the order he uses? If you see this particular verse, Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha, right? So he says first Bhavan. Bhavan is you, yourself. And then followed by Bhishma. Now who is senior? Is Dronacharya senior or Bhishma senior?
Bhishma.
So Duryodhana had this doubt. If I tell Bhishma's name first, then Dronacharya will be offended. And if I tell Dronacharya's name, then Bhishma will be offended. How to resolve this dilemma? But then he went with Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha, which means he said, he made the estimation or calculation that Brahmanas, they were higher than Kshatriyas. In fact, in those days, Brahmanas were worshipped, even by the Kshatriyas. So he made the calculation that I should tell the name of Dronacharya first, and Bhishma won't be offended. Just see, even the order in which he said makes sense, because in those days, even today, whoever is the most important person, if you have an invitation going on, or even if you, in the corporate world, if you want to know for a formal occasion, you will see that there is a hierarchy in which the importance is given. So in this case also, it is said that Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha. So next verse, please. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnas. So it's done, right? The 8 is done?
No, we have to do 8.
8 only.
Okay. Yes. All right. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha.
Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha.
Kripascha Samitin Jayah.
Kripascha Samitim Jaya.
Ashvattama Vikarnascha.
Ashvathama Vikarnascha.
Saumadattis Tataiva Cha.
Somadattis Tathaiva Cha.
Translation, please.
There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somdatta called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle.
Who is Vikarna? We can type.
Brother of Duryodhana.
Sorry? Brother of?
Duryodhana.
Brother of Duryodhana.
One of the Kauravas?
Right, I get it, but then the question begs is, why is he being mentioned here? He is not even a powerful person. He really didn't have any, as it's called in the political terms, mass base. I mean, popular grassroots leader. He was not that. He was not a powerful person. And he was right. That is true. And thank you so much for all the devotees that posted that he opposed. He was the only person amongst the entire Kaurava clan who opposed. But then, what was the reason for Duryodhana mentioning Vikarna? The reason was this: because he was the only person who opposed amongst his brothers. The Kshatriya code of conduct demanded, or the etiquette was, that when the war started or before the war started, you could fight on any side. The side was not cast in stone. You could fight on any side. Once war started, then you cannot switch sides. So Duryodhana mentions Vikarna out of the fear that Vikarna might defect to the other side. So that's why he mentioned Vikarna amongst all these people. It's like for those who follow that saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So this was Vikarna who, that's the reason why it's mentioned here. And I think, Sirisha Mataji, when the question is done, I think the person who spoke is still being shown on the screen. Just the focus, maybe you need to adjust accordingly.
Sure, Prabhu.
Okay, who's the next?
It's me, Prabhu.
Yeah, so yes, thank you. Kindly repeat after me. Anye cha bahava shura.
Anye cha bahavaha shura.
Madarte tyaktva jivitaha.
Madarte tyaktva jivitaha.
Nana shastra praharanaha.
Nana shastra praharanaha.
Sarve yuddha visharadaha.
Sarve yuddha visharadaha.
Translation.
There are many heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science.
So Srila Prabhupada writes indirectly that Duryodhana knew that, yeah, these people are going to lay down their lives, literally speaking, because it was just when he spoke, there was this confidence that, oh, they are my friends, they are so close to me that, they are willing to give their lives for me. But Acharya say, words spoken true because they were literal. Everybody is going to die in this battlefield. So Acharya say that is the thing. Next verse, please. Who's next? Should I pick or it's already done? We need to have a system in place. Next week onwards, we should either have, for those who didn't read, maybe you can enter your name in the WhatsApp group. Then we can create that list and call accordingly. So that can be done too, so that everybody gets a chance to read, and that would be my goal. Go for it, Ambarish. Why not? Aparyaptam tadasmakam.
Aparyaptam tad asmakam.
Balam bhishma bhirakshitam.
Balam bhishma bhirakshitam.
Paryaptam tvidam etesham.
Paryaptam Tui idam isetam isesam itesam.
Amarish, so it goes, it's like twist, right? Say twist.
Twist.
Twidam.
Twidam.
So so if you see, it's actually, the problem is beta wherever you get TV and idam, it's highly difficult to read, and I get it. And unless you do the Sanskrit, it's difficult. So you just club them together. Wherever you get it, you get it's a twidam. Twidam is the twidam. So it is twidam. So let's try that again. Okay. Paryaptam tvidam
Paryaptam twidam etesham.
Good job. Balam bhima bhirakshitam.
Balam bhima bhirakshitam.
Excellent. Translation.
Translation. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited.
Mm-hmm. So one of the beauty of Sanskrit, so here it is mentioned that some people, even when we read the 9th chapter, where Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam. Guhyam? Guhyam, for those, is secret. And Param Guhyam also is mentioned. Now people will be scratching their head. I have all the 18 chapters right in front of me. It's not like those Bhagavad Gita app, where the free version has only 2 chapters. And then if you want all the 18, then you need to pay money. Or some password protected document that you need to punch in the password to know the 18 chapters. Is 18 chapters freely available? Yes or yes? Yeah. Then the question comes is, what's the secret? I mean, where is the secret? Now, there is a philosophical and esoteric point that is there, and let's deal with that a little later. Just let's take purely from the basis of Sanskrit. This particular verse says, Aparyaptam tadasmakam bhalam bhima bhirakshitam paryaptam tvidametesham bhalam bhishma bhirakshitam. This is what Duryodhana's words are. Now here the word aparyaptam means immeasurable. According to Duryodhana, it means immeasurable. It means paryaptam is like sufficient and aparyaptam is like limitless. And that is what the acharyas have mentioned here. And on one sense, it does make, on one point, it does make sense, because Duryodhana, how many? 11 divisions of army, and Pandavas have 7, which means Duryodhana is saying our army is immeasurable. And at this point of time, you can see this whole 30-40 square miles of land with all these soldiers ready to fight. He says they are immeasurable. And then ours is protected by Bhishma, whereas aparyaptam is paryaptam is for the Pandavas. Now the acharyas have twisted this. Aparyaptam can also mean insufficient, and paryaptam can mean sufficient. So the acharyas have said, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, even though our army is much more than the Pandavas, you two people, he didn't say like that literally, but he said, because you have so much of affection for Pandavas, because you're so much on the side of the Pandavas, no matter how much of army we will have, it will become insufficient unless you don't fight from my side. So just the Sanskrit itself, you can get from one word, multiple meanings. And if you have a combination of words, you can get really multiple meanings. And Tejas here is the map. He can give you the factorials and everything, or that can come out. If one word has 3 meanings, the second word has 2 meanings, and third word. And if you take that sentence, it can have that combination of meanings. So just from a Sanskrit perspective, it is very hard to understand the Gita unless one has that kind of a teacher who can help one understand. Otherwise, we miss the meanings. That's why you'll get multiple meanings and you'll be clueless and you'll be lost. For example, I'll give a simple thing. I'll give a simple example. You get the map of the city, right? If there's a map of the city. It's a brand new city. You're visiting that city and you want to take a vacation. And you look at the map. And then you are given the information. Oh, you have to take left on the first street and make a left on the Oak Street, and then make a right on the 3rd Street. Let's give an example. First Oak and then 3rd Street. You have a simple direction and anybody can follow it. You look in the map, the first street where you have to go has 4 different names for that street. It has First, and it has Martin Luther King. It has also called Capitol. It is also called this. And then the second street has 3 more meanings to it. The third street has 2 more meanings to it. And they are all written in the map. This can mean this, this, or this. That can mean this, this, or this. That can mean this, this, or this. Now tell me, how can you, if somebody says go left, is this what it is? That what it is? So this is where the Sanskrit, and there's a whole other section on Sanskrit and its translation and so on and so forth, but let's not get there. So Bhagavad Gita, that's the reason why it is called an open secret, because purely from a Sanskrit translation perspective, that can have many meanings. And if one is not careful, one can end up in the wrong meaning, as much as you have roads which have multiple names, and then you can really end up somewhere far away from your destination. Does that make sense? All right. Sachinandana Hari Prabhu, you want to do with me the next one? Is there? Okay, if not, Sanyito Perumala, can you please give me a little bit of introduction who you are, and then thank you so much for joining. You are on mute, Mataji.
Oh, sorry, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Can you hear now? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Prabhuji, I am from, my name is Swapna.
Yeah.
I am from Peoria, Illinois,
Thank you.
Chicago area. Yeah. This is my first class. I came to know about this through one of my friend, Lavanya, who is also in this call.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Very nice to see Prabhuji. Yeah.
Same here. So one of the beauties or the advantage right now is COVID has made it level field. Previously, I was giving classes in the temple and somebody had joined online and I really couldn't know who had joined versus who did not. So those who thought they can get away with not joining classes and bunking, ha ha ha, just joking, just joking. Bhakti Sastri attendance is not compulsory. So, but just joking. So Swapna Mataji, thank you so much for joining from Peoria, Illinois, and welcome.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Oh, Peoria is a land of caterpillar, right?
Yes, you're right. Yes.
Yeah. Peoria. All right.
So can I know where this class is streaming from?
We are doing this from San Jose, the West Coast, California.
San Jose. Okay, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Okay, nice to see you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So Sachinandana Hari Prabhu can speak. So maybe Swapna Mataji, you hold on to that, or you hold on to that, and then you can read the next verse, and then maybe Sachinandana Hari Prabhu will lead. After that, let's go back to. I want to also welcome from Chicago Anika, who's one of our younger members who joined, so she can also try reading one verse. Anika, Hare Krishna. Please all bear with me because we are doing this Zoom thing for the first time and having quite few people on Zoom, so we're trying to adjust. So please bear with me. All right. So Sachinandana Hari Prabhu, next, let's do the next verse. We'll just go along as we go along.
So should I do the text, Prabhuji? 11th one?
Swapna Mataji is
yes.
What you're yeah, no, yeah, please do it. Maybe Sachinandan Hari Prabhu will do it the next one. So,
okay.
Kindly repeat after me. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu.
Ayaneshu cha sarveshu.
Yata bhagam avastitah.
Yatha bhaga vamastita.
Bhishmameva bhirakshantu.
Bhishmameva bhirakshantu.
Bhavanta sarva evahi.
Bhavanta sarva evahi. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army.
Thank you. So here Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that maybe he felt, who felt? The other soldiers might have felt, oh my God, he's just mentioning the name. It can happen. Like, it can happen that the other soldiers might feel that he's just mentioning Bhishma and Drona and my God, Vikarna. And Dushasana must have felt like a little upset that, oh, he's not mentioning my name. So just to pacify that, Duryodhana said, oh, I didn't mention all of your names, but please, all of you must, Bhishma is our senior most soldier, but he's old. And so you should all come and support him, just to give importance to others. So that was his strategy when he said all these things. Next verse, please. And then I'll call some names that I'm not super familiar, so that way we can do, okay. Tasya sanjanayan harsham.
I'm reading.
No, Anika, we are doing Sachinandana Hari Prabhu and then you can do. Is that okay, beta? Thank you.
Okay.
Sachinandana Hari Prabhu. Okay. All right, Anika, you can go. Maybe you can do next. Go ahead. Come with, we can repeat with me. Tasya sanjanayan harsham.
Tasya sanjanayam harsham.
Guru vriddha pitamaha.
Guru vriddha pitamaha.
Simhanadam vinadyochai.
Simhanadam vinadyochai.
Shankam dadmau pratapavan.
Shankham dadmau pratapavan. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy.
Thank you.
Sorry, Prabhuji. I think there was issue with my laptop.
No problem. Next verse. Tata shankascha bhairyascha.
Tataha shankhascha bhairyascha.
Panavanaka gomukhaha.
Panavanaka gomukhaha.
Sahasaivabhyahanyanta.
Sahasaivabhyahanyantaha.
Sa shabdastu mulo bhava.
Sashabdastumulo bhavat. Translation. After that, the conch shell, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous.
Thank you. Mahatma Prabhu, can you join? That's okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, thank you. Tata Shvetairhayayukte
Tata Swete Yukte
Mahati Syandane Stito
Mahati Sandane Stito
Madhava Pandavaschaiva
Madhava Pandava Chaiva
Divyau Shankau Pradadmatuhu.
Devyo Sankau Apadatmatu. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjun, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental counsels.
Wonderful, thank you. Jai Shri Mataji from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Panchajanyam Hrishikesho
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Poundram Dadmau Mahashankam
Poundram Dadmo Mahashankham
Bhimakarma Vrikodaraha.
Bhimakarma Vrikodara. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya, Arjuna blew his Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Poundra.
So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the names are given based on the activities of these personalities. The Supreme Lord is addressed here as Rishikesha. Rishikesha means one who is the controller of senses. And Dhananjaya is because Arjuna helped Maharaj Yudhishthir earn wealth for the Rajasuya sacrifice. And then Bhima is called Vrikodaraha. Udaraha means, as you know, is anybody wants to take a guess in Sanskrit what Udaraha means?
Belly.
Belly. So because it is called Damodara, and Dama is rope and Udara is belly. So Vrikodara is a gigantic or huge. And so it is mentioned that Bhima was a voracious eater. He couldn't live without eating. In fact, when the Pandavas were rescued or saved from the burning of the firehouse Lakshagriha, Sirisha Mataji, can you make me the focus, please? Okay, never mind. Never mind.
We are seeing you, Prabhuji.
Oh, now it is. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So when Pandavas were actually rescued from Lakshagriha, we know the story of how Duryodhana tried to kill the Pandavas. He arranged for them to stay in the house made of lac. And why would they go stay in the house made of lac? In those days, just like today, we all go camping, yes or yes. And when we go camping, what do? We take stuff, we take sleeping bags, we take some tents, we take some bare necessities, and then we can go and set up the tents, and then just do camping. But in those days, when kings had to go to camping, they didn't have to go to REI store or this store at that store buy tents. In advance, they would actually build huge mansions. If you like, for example, if you are the king of America, and then if you like to go and relax for some time in Yosemite National Park, they would build a house right in the middle of Yosemite National Park, where the kings would go or the people would go and stay. And so one day, Duryodhana went to Dhritarashtra and he said, Pandavas, poor Pandavas, they're really working hard. They need to take a vacation. And, please ask them to, go and relax in certain forest. And there's a nice, beautiful lake. And it's very, very, very picturesque. The Pandavas got doubt. Why would Duryodhana give them vacation? And he himself, and Duryodhana said, no, I can't come because, I have some work and so on and so forth. And Yudhishthira became suspicious. He started consulting his brothers. What is going on here? I feel something is amiss. But the quality of Yudhishthira was that he would never disobey his elders. And Dhritarashtra was the king. So he was subservient to the king and he agreed. Vidura got to know what was the reason why the Pandavas were being sent to Varanavat. And before they were being sent, Duryodhana called his trusted aide called Purochana. He said, "Oh Purochana, go to Varanavat. Build a beautiful house that is highly inflammable. The walls were hollow and in which there were like oil and ghee and you name it. Fortunately, they didn't have gunpowder in those days. Probably they would have filled it up with that. And highly inflammable material. The bricks that was used to build the structure were soaked in ghee for a long time before they actually were built. And you know what's the beauty? There was a big fort. And the back of the house was actually, this was the back of the house, and the house was built like this so that the back would be facing the fort wall. This way, there was only one entrance to the house, and that entrance was to the front. There was no other entrance into the house. And Vidura got to know of this conspiracy. He secretly warns Yudhishthira, saying that this is what is going to happen. And Yudhishthira also gets the hint. And later a tunnel digger will come and they dig a tunnel like they do nowadays from Mexico to US to import drugs and do all sorts of stuff. But that was a transcendental purpose. And the Pandavas escape from Varanavat and they start living incognito. At that point of time, they start living as Brahmanas. They were not sure if they will have more attacks on their lives by Duryodhana, or Duryodhana anticipating that they will survive this thing and send armies or some other assassins to kill them. They were not sure. So they wanted to be incognito. And during this time, they started living in Ekachakra, in a particular village, and they dressed up as Brahmanas and they started begging door to door. And the way they would live is by collecting food from different places, because Brahmanas then and even now have the right to beg. The 6 qualities of Brahmanas are Yajan Yajan, Patan Patan, Dana and Pratigriha. Yajan, so one of the things is to ask for charity and to give charity. That is Brahmana. So once they were living in Ekachakra, they would live by collecting food from different houses. And this was the thing. And if people think, okay, Srivasa Pandit Das is off the rockers because what is the story that he's mentioning? There is a connection. They would collect the food. There was Mother Kunti, Nakula, Sahadeva, Bhima, Yudhishthira, Nakula, 6 of them, right? 5 Pandava brothers, and Mother Kunti. The food that was collected was divided 50-50. And the entire food, it was half. That half, one half would actually go to Bhima. And all the other 5 had to divide 5 parts in the remaining half and they would eat. So he is called Vrikodara for a reason, because Bhima was a voracious eater. In fact, the Pandava Nirjal Ekadashi that we do is more of a Bhima Nirjal Ekadashi, because he told Vyasa that, look, I can't do this. Ekadashi for me is impossible. The fire in my belly is burning so strong that forget one day, I can't live without few hours or without eating. And therefore, Vyasdeva comes and says to him that that for this particular Ekadashi, you do Nirjal, which means you don't even drink water throughout the day. And then by doing that one day, you have done for the whole year. So you have a special privilege. For those who kind of keep scratching their heads that why do we have to fast without water, this is the reason behind it. So yeah. Where are we? We'll go to 20. Okay, I think for chapter number 2, do we have 2 sessions or 1 session? Does anybody remember? 2 classes or 1?
I don't think so. We get the schedule, Prabhu, but I'm not sure if anybody.
We have the schedule. I think it's there in the. Did we have the schedule or no?
Prabhu, we haven't received anything.
You haven't received. Oh, wonderful. That is good, because chapter 2 we need 2 verses. So let's quickly go through. I will not stop for anything. We'll complete at least about 20 verses or so, and then we'll take question and answers. Is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's move on. Sorry.
So far, no questions are posted, Prabhu.
Okay. I'll call devotees who they are usually not part of ISV, so I'll balance it out. Don't worry. But in general, Srivani Mataji, Hare Krishna. Srivani. I hope it's a Mataji. It is not. All right. Amita Anand Vilas Das, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
You are, please tell a little bit about yourself, maybe just 30 seconds about yourself.
Krishna Prabhu. So I live at New Goloka in North Carolina. And
Nice.
I've been at ISKCON for about 20 years.
Wow, amazing.
Initiated in 2013. That's about it.
Oh, wonderful. Amit Anand Prabhu, I am so happy that you joined our Bhakti Sastri, and I wholeheartedly welcome you from North Carolina. And then please keep giving us your association. And if you can, and maybe you can do the next verse with us.
Sure.
Okay, text 16 and 18. Ananta Vijayam Raja.
Ananta Vijayam Raja.
Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha.
Kunti Putro Yudhishthira.
Nakula Sahadevascha.
Nakula Sahadevascha.
Sughosha Mani Pushpaka.
Sughosha Mani Pushpaka.
Kaschascha Parameshwasaha.
काश्यश्च परमेश्वरश्च
शिखण्डी च महारथः
शिखण्डी च महारथा
दृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च
धृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च
सात्यकिश्च पराजितः
सात्याकिश्च पराजिता
द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च
द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयश्च
सर्वशः पृथिवीपते
सर्वश पृथ्वीपते
सौभद्रश्च महाबाहुः
सौभद्रश्च महाबाहु
शङ्कान् दद्मु पृथक् पृथक्
शङ्खान् दद्मौ पृथक् पृथक्.
Translation.
King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell. The Ananta Vijaya and Nakula and Sahadeva blew the Sughosha and Mani Pushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, and the sons of Draupadi and others, O king, such as the mighty armed son of Subhadra, all blew their respective conch shells.
Thank you, Amitananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anushri, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, beta. Let's do the 19th. Sagoshodartarashtraणam
Sagoshodartarashtralam
Hridayani Vyadarayat
Hridayani Vyadarayat
Nabhascha Prithivim Chaiva
Nabhascha Prativim Jaiva
Tumulobhyanunadayan.
Tumulubhyayunadayan. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious. Vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra.
Thank you, beta. Siddheshwari Priya Mataji. Hare Krishna. Is it again?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Please tell me a little bit about yourself, Mataji, and where are you joining from?
Hare Krishna, my name is Siddheshwari Priya Devi Dasi and I am joining from Dallas, Radha Kalajanji Temple.
Harival.
Hare
Welcome.
Krishna.
Welcome, Mataji. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So would you like to do the next verse, 20th?
Yes,
With
Prabhu.
us? Okay,
Yes,
thank you. अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा
अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा
धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः
धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजा
प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते
प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते
धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः
धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवा
ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम्
ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम्
इदम् आह महीपते
idam aha mahipate. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot, bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra, drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
And Anjana Gopika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Dandat Pranam. Let's do 21 and 22.
Yes, Prabhu.
Arjuna Uvacha
Arjuna Vacha
Senayor Ubhayor Madhye
Srenayoruvayor Madhe
Ratam Stapayamechyuta
रथं स्थापयामेच्युतः यावद् एतान् निरीक्षेऽहम्
योद्धुकामान् अवस्थितान्
योद्धुकामान् अवस्थितान्
कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम्
कहे मया सह योद्धव्यम्
अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे
अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे. Translation. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present here who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms.
Um, so in these two verses, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport as to how Krishna, who is the supreme absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead, he has become an ordinary chariot driver for Arjuna. Please understand that Krishna, he is the personality, he is God. And there is nothing to do, there is nothing that can change the fact that he is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is he is not the creator of anything, but his Vishnu expansions, the expansion of his expansion of his expansion creates this entire universes. And in his own abode, Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sambhrama Sevyamanam, millions and millions of goddesses of fortune wait upon him. And but he is the Atmarama, he is the supremely self-satisfied. He is that personality who the whole world is attracted to, who is the maintainer, who is the creator, who the whole world has to listen. You don't have a choice. That is Krishna, and that is his awesome power. We think we have power, but that our power is very, very relative, is very, very temporary, is very, very limited. But Krishna, his power is absolute, is um, is applicable in all places, in all circumstances, under all times. He is that same personality who actually initiated Brahma when Brahma was struggling to understand how to create this material world. And that same supreme absolute truth has become a chariot driver of Arjuna. If Arjuna says to Krishna, "Oh Krishna, take my chariot here," he takes the chariot there. Not that Krishna needs to do it, but it shows the intense love that Krishna has for his devotees. That we are all here trying to be Krishna conscious and try to serve Krishna. Please understand, Srila Prabhupada writes that Krishna is also equally looking an opportunity to serve his devotees. That supreme absolute truth, who is unconquerable by any means, is only conquered by the love of his devotees. And this shows here where Arjuna is asking Krishna, "Oh Krishna, take my chariot here and take my chariot there." This is the nature of Krishna. That Bhagavad Gita, our Shastras describe love of God as the highest truth. And oftentimes in Bhagavad Gita, people ask, where is it? Where is it mentioned here in Bhagavad Gita that love of God is the highest truth? It is implicitly mentioned here. In Bhagavad Gita, nothing is explicit. Um, for one or two members of this august audience who are also doing the nectar of devotion reading with us, we can see how Krishna is Raso Vaisaha, and how he becomes subordinate to his devotees, conquered by their love, and enjoys and relishes that love. That is Krishna. And the path to that love is through Bhagavad Gita. We cannot jump over or we cannot understand Krishna directly by trying to participate in that activities. It has to come naturally, but it has to come through sadhana, but nevertheless it will come. And that is the path of devotion to Krishna that we are all situated on. And I hope and pray that each and every one of us remain ever fixed in this path to serve Krishna, because he is the goal. He is the ultimate purpose of life, and he is the ultimate source of happiness. In Bhagavad Gita, it is all given in the seed form, but Bhagavatam is so clear at many levels that unless one renders real loving service to Krishna in an unmotivated and uninterrupted way, one cannot find peace and happiness, or the soul is not satisfied. So here these two verses actually mention that aspect of Krishna. If there are no questions, we can continue reading. If there are questions at this point of time, you can either type or you can unmute. After the question session is done, Srivasa, you can read and then followed by Ujjwala Rasamataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, yes.
Dandot Pranam, Prabhu. Prabhu, I have a question regarding the diplomacy of Duryodhana.
Yes, Ankurji.
So it was mentioned that he very nicely chose his words and spoke accordingly to Dronacharya. So is this kind of diplomacy a negative quality? Because we see even in devotees circles or Sajjan Purush or the saintly people, they also choose their words very wisely. So is this diplomacy being shown as a negative quality of Duryodhan when Acharyas point that out?
The voice was crackling a little bit, but from what I can understand is even amongst the devotee circles, there is a certain diplomacy, and Duryodhana also is exhibiting the same quality. Is that a negative or a positive quality? Is that your question, right, Ankurji?
Yes, Prabhuji. So that diplomatic quality of Duryodhan, is that being shown as a negative quality?
Yes. So in the devotee circles, diplomacy is not the same as what is being shown here by Duryodhana. Now, in the Nectar of Instruction, the last semester, we learned Vacho Vegam, Manasak Krodha Vegam. And then Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita about the austerity of speech. Anudvega Karam Vakyam. It is there in the 17th chapter for those who want to look at it. The restraint on speech is not same as diplomacy. The instruction or the order by Krishna that your words have to be truthful, pleasing, and for the welfare of others, it's a different criteria than when I use diplomacy to manipulate people to get what I want. Here, Duryodhana was only concerned about his victory, and he was willing to use the words, even though they could be untrue, just to get or gain or ensure his victory. Is that helpful, Ankurji?
Yes, Prabhu, that helps very much. So main point is motivation behind those words.
Yeah. And because here the words were for his own selfish motivation, whereas please understand that during the first 2 days of Mahabharata war, which lasted for 18 days, the Kauravas were victorious and Duryodhana was happy. But when the reversals started happening after that, he was getting agitated day by day. And his words were actually very hurtful and deeply piercing his teachers, his superiors. In fact, at one point, Dronacharya was so hurt by the words of Duryodhana that he said, usually when the war was ending for that day, the warriors would go into their camps. They would remove all the armors and the quivers that they had to carry, arrows and everything, and they would like go back to the normal clothes. But Duryodhana, he was getting so agitated that he actually, not insulting, but very sharp and piercing words to Dronacharya, saying that you are not fighting, and so on and so forth. He was manipulating in left, right, and center. Just so those kinds of words, to the extent Dronacharya said, unless I don't remember the exact vow he had taken. He said, till I accomplish that vow, I'm not going to take off my armor. I'm going to stay in this armor. So it's not exactly the same, because the intention was very different, as you so rightly pointed out. Is that okay, Ankurji?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. And sorry for jumping in and asking my question. I will follow.
No. This is the jump time for questions. Because this is where one of the things is, in the class we would have pretty, anytime people would ask questions, but there were problems with that, and I'll come to that once we're done with the round of questions. Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have Rambabu Prabhu is saying that he has 2 questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanavad Pranam. Prabhuji, I'm just trying to understand the nature of Sanjaya here. So actually it is mentioned that Sanjaya is a disciple of Vyasadeva, and at the same time it appears that he knows the nature of Krishna, and he knows what has to be done and what should not be done. But still he appears that he is serving Dhritarashtra so closely, and when Dhritarashtra left for forest later, he laments. So how to understand, I mean, how we need to understand these things, Prabhuji? Dhritarashtra is not a transcendent person with transcendental vision, but he is still serving Dhritarashtra.
Well, why would Bhishma fight on the side of Duryodhana? He was an exalted devotee. In fact, Bhagavatam mentions that he is one of the 12 Mahajanas. Swayambhu Narada Shambhu Kumaro Kapilo Manu Prahlada Janako Bhishma Palirvayasa Kirvayam. So even though he was the devotee of Krishna, in fact, not only was he just on the side, he was shooting arrows left, right, and center. In fact, Bhagavatam mentions that the arrows were piercing Krishna, and there was blood that was trickling in from those arrows on the transcendental body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is the dharma, and then for Sanjaya was a charioteer. He was not a kshatriya to choose sides. So when you are financially obligated or having service, you just don't abruptly give up service like that, even though it may be unfair. That is one aspect, which is the dharma consideration or the occupational duty consideration. And the second thing, Rambabu Garu, is that Sanjaya was one of the most frankest persons you could be with Dhritarashtra. In fact, he was talking to him like a friend. At so many times in Mahabharata, he said, "O king, it was your fault." He bluntly and openly said to the king, "It is your fault that this is all is happening." And Dhritarashtra actually would tolerate, because he had that, because he was so close to Dhritarashtra, Sanjaya was able to speak completely freely, like a normal person would. And so by that sense also, he was reforming, or he was trying to help Dhritarashtra. But unfortunately, Dhritarashtra didn't listen. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, so for that sake, Vidura was also trying to help. But in case of Sanjaya, actually, he was lamenting the departure of Dhritarashtra. So that part I couldn't comprehend.
The idea there is, if you serve a person so long, for so many days, good or bad, you do still have some lamentation. I mean, how many fathers that you know were very strict, or sometimes were prone to anger or unnecessarily abusing the child for no reason. But nevertheless, when the father dies, there is certain lamentation in the son. So it's just a natural thing that comes from being attached to a person so long. And then, Rambabu, you work for a company, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
God forbid this never happens. But assume that company declares bankruptcy and the shelter is gone. then you will also feel certain lamentation. In that same way, Dhritarashtra was the master and protector of Sanjaya all these days. So naturally, there will be certain lamentation, correct? Like that.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
And yeah, I see so many questions. Maybe I will ask my second question.
No. As a second one, it's fine.
In this, I mean, when there was mention about Bhishma, right? Bhishma Karma Vrukodaraha. So the word Bhishma Karma was translated as the one who performs Herculean tasks. So does it Bhishma? The Bhima itself means that Herculean, or the word itself means Herculean.
Yeah, that can be one thing. And the other thing was that Bhima actually had that kind of strength to perform Herculean tasks. So when the Pandavas were going from, they were 12 years, they were in the forest. But please understand that 12 years, they were not in the same forest on the exact same spot. In fact, they would stay there and, hundreds of thousands of Brahmanas would be staying with them. And that part would quickly become depleted of resources and they had to move to some other part. And part of that journey was that they had to walk long distances or climb huge mountains. And at one point, Draupadi, Nakula, Sahadev, Yudhishthir, they would become really fatigued. Arjuna sometimes to an extent. They would become really fatigued. So actually, Bhima would carry all of these personalities in his arms and he would just climb the huge mountains. So in that sense, Herculean tasks also meant that Bhima was capable of doing all those things. And he had the strength of 10,000 elephants. So.
Okay.
And it is mentioned, and it's mentioned in Mahabharata war that Bhima would just joyfully go amidst this raging mad elephants and he would just slap them and they would fall to ground and die. That was Bhima. So yeah, Bhima Karma Vrukodara. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. We have a next question from Akash Prabhu. He has 2 questions. Please go ahead, Prabhu. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think he wrote in the text. Is that the same thing, Akashji?
Yes. Can I read, Prabhu?
No, I can read it here. Who wrote down the Bhagavad Gita in the text form? Can we assume it is the same author as Mahabharata? Yes, that is true for the first one. However, the chapters and their names came to be, as it was conversation between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Was it Srila Vyasadeva? He divided it based on the different, so the entire Mahabharata itself was divided into parvas, and then each of the parvas was subdivided into chapters. Yes, so you answered your own question, Akashi. And then Ujjwala Rasa Mataji says, in text 15, Krishna is referred to Hrishikesha with 2 different meanings, if you can explain it.
So Prabhu, in first it says that he is the owner of all senses.
Yeah.
And then in bottom it is said Rishikesha because he gave directions to Arjuna on battlefield of Kurukshetra.
Right.
And then again in a later part, he is referred as a Rishikesha in, I think, text 24 or something, 24 or 25, that he knew everything. So what is the actual, they are trying to, Prabhupada is trying to tell us. I was wondering.
So the verse you are referring to, thank you so much. That's a beautiful question. Thank you, Mataji. So Hrishikesha in the 24th text in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, as Hrishikesha or director of senses and mind of every living entity, Krishna could understand the Arjuna's purpose. So he already knew what would happen with Arjuna, and that's why it's mentioned that he's called Hrishikesha, because he knows what is going on in the mind of each living entity and what they are thinking. So it's just not the director. So assume that there is a movie. Okay, you are producing the movie and you are the director. Now you should have a sense of what's going to happen and what's going on. Otherwise, it's hard to direct. So Krishna, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 25th verse of the, no, 26th verse of the 7th chapter. What is that? Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kashchana. He says that, oh Arjuna, I know everything that is going to happen, all the past, present, and future. So by that sense, he knows, and he knows what's going on in the mind. So that's why he's called Rishikesha, or the director of senses. Which can bring up one more question, like, if he's the director of senses, and my senses are directed by him, then what about me? And then if you continue staying in the Bhagavad Gita course, then we'll learn the answer to that. So thank you, Mataji. Does it answer your question?
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. And thank you for the class, Prabhu.
Thank you for coming.
No.
So, and then Vaishnavi asks, what was Duryodhana in his past life? I don't know what he was in his past life, but he was an Amsha of Kali. So Kali Yuga is mentioned is an age of quarrel and hypocrisy, where you have all these negative qualities that are just pervading all around. As we read newspapers, you will find they are dripping with Kali Yuga qualities. And then he was a particle or part of that age of Kali, the personification of Kali. So that's my understanding. Amitananda Prabhu, since Dhritarashtra was not fit, so the kingdom was temporarily given to Pandu. Why wouldn't Duryodhana be the rightful heir of the kingdom to begin with? Excellent question. First of all, Pandu was not given the temporary charge of the kingdom. In fact, one of the biggest angst or one of the biggest pain points of Duryodhana was that even though I am elder to Pandu, I am not the king. The reason was simple. The reason was, are you fit for this job or not? It was not out of compassion, but so I assume that the person who is unable to see, he comes and says to me, look, I have this long-standing desire to drive you to the airport, about 40 miles from here, San Francisco airport. While I can sympathize with that person, I might not really approve of his driving the car because he cannot see. It's nothing to do with that person's fault. It's just the way things are that his desire might not be fulfilled. So kings in those days, you would have the best possible person rule the kingdom. And because Dhritarashtra was disqualified because of his blindness, I mean, you can't see. So he was disqualified, and Pandu was actually permanently the king. And when Pandu died, Dhritarashtra became the king. Now, Yudhishthir was born earlier than Duryodhana, and he was more qualified to become the king than Duryodhana. And he was more popular, and he had all the right qualities. So that also mattered. So in both the sense, is that helpful?
So, Prabhu, what you explained about Dhritarashtra, that's perfectly understandable. And so my question is, after Pandu, the kingdom should go back to one of the son of Dhritarashtra. So what is the basis for Pandavas getting the kingdom or claiming the kingdom?
So as I said, in that lineage, Yudhishthir was born before Duryodhana. And therefore, if you just count the eldest in that family or the race, that was Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir would be claimant for the throne or the position of the king. In fact, seeing the popularity and the characteristics and qualities of Yudhishthir, he was made the heir to the throne after Dhritarashtra passed away. and Duryodhana couldn't tolerate it. He was envious, and so he did lots of stuff just to get Yudhishthira out of picture.
Okay, Prabhu. So it's based on the qualification of Yudhishthira.
And also birthright, right? So he was the eldest. Yudhishthira was born before Duryodhana.
But he was born to Pandu, not to Dhritarashtra. Wouldn't that count?
No, because it is in the same race, right? It was in the same race. The Vamsh was the same. And then, so the next person would be the senior most person, and he should be qualified, both. And so from both the respects, he was much more qualified to become the king than Duryodhana. So that's the reason.
All right. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hey, just had a question. Yes, okay, Mate, go ahead.
Mataji, Prabhuji, this on the same thing. I know that Yudhishthira was the eldest one. That's why he was the right person to become the king. But just want to understand, like in that time, was it the criteria was that the eldest one would become, or the fit criteria is the one that takes precedence? Like example, like this Dhritarashtra was there and Pandu was there, but because Dhritarashtra was not fit, so Pandu became the king. But if Duryodhan was eldest, then but he was not the right fit, then how would I'm just want to understand, like, is it the eldest, like the hierarchy is based upon the age, or even the fit criteria comes into picture during that time?
Excuse me, Prabhu. Sorry, Prabhu.
Fit takes precedence. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Prabhu. I just wanted to, just in this case, Dhritarashtra was not the king. Actually, he was a representative of that, of the king. So,
sorry, Matthew, can you clarify that?
he was not the king actually, because of his blindness. Pandu was the king. Actually.
Correct. So, thank you for bringing that subtle point. That is true. Pandu was installed the king, but he later renounced that kingdom, and he started living like a ascetic in the mountains. And during that time, Dhritarashtra was ruling on behalf of Pandu. But when Pandu died prematurely in the forest, then Dhritarashtra became the full-fledged king, from acting CEO to full-time CEO.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Yeah, there is that subtlety, but eventually he was the king. His word was the law, but somehow, because he was weak-minded and very affectionate towards Duryodhana, he couldn't properly implement dharma. So.
Yeah, Prabhu.
Okay, we have 3 more minutes to go. And we have completed only half of the chapter. So this is going to be a perpetual problem. What should we do? Okay, we still take more questions. Let's complete the question. Tejas, you had a question. Go for it.
Yes, Prabhu. So I kind of had 2 questions, but I'll ask the more important one, and then I'll skip the other one. Okay. But so in Mahabharata, in general, we see that there's more praise of Lord Shiva, right? And then in Bhagavad Gita, we see this like shift from like praise of Mahadev, and then Krishna is talking about himself, and there's glories of Krishna, right? So can you kind of explain why in Mahabharata there's a focus when like Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Krishna, who knows Bhagavad Dharma, is still describing the glories of Mahadev more than, or like it's more accepted as Mahadev is Ishwar in that?
Which sections are we specifically talking about, Tejas?
I mean, in general, Mahabharata is more like is more in that attitude that, like Lord Shiva is supreme, like. And my intuition is telling me it's because Mahabharata has more to do with Artha, Dharma, Karma, and Moksha. It's a bit of more materialistic. But yeah, I mean,
if I can take a different position, and actually I can say that if anything, Mahabharata actually is even demoting Shiva from what the Rudra Tattva is. And let me explain. So when Arjuna goes in search of the heavenly weapons, you know the story of how he encounters Lord Shiva as a hunter. And then they have like a duel where he gives a good run for money to Lord Shiva, and then later when he's completely decimated by Lord Shiva, then he comes to his senses and you are that Shiva, you're not that hunter that you said. So if anything, Lord Shiva is even not even shown as God, but almost on the same level as Arjuna, right? That is one instance where I can think of Lord Shiva and Mahabharata. If you can think of other episodes where you think that supports your statement, definitely will be more than happy to kind of get into it. But from my understanding, Mahabharata is a general history replete with moral instructions for, and in a way romantic, intrigue, backstabbing, all the soap opera of the modern times, just to help people come to Bhagavad Gita. So Srila Vyasadeva cleverly inserted Bhagavad Gita in between the Mahabharata so that people can come to understand or talk or know about Krishna and get the essence of the Vedic knowledge.
Yeah, I was just asking because if you see like a lot of like the Shiva Sampradayas, they will always quote Mahabharata saying that, other than Bhagavad Gita, like in general, Mahabharata is considered like considers that Shiva side.
Okay. Kamala Harris.
One other thing.
No. Actually, it's funny thing. Forget Mahabharata. Kamala Harris is selected as the Democratic nominee for the vice president. Yes or yes?
Yes.
You know what? How much of pride and joy and just chest beating is going on in India?
I can only imagine how much, Prabhu.
It is like they were thrilled beyond thing that, oh my God, this Kamala Harris, who is the daughter of an Indian original person, is now running, and there's so much of joy in India. But she's born here, she's fighting for us, she's fighting for US. But nevertheless, India is having this like vicarious sense of joy, saying that one of ours is gone there. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that based on who you ask, they can see every Purana as something supporting their cause. And so, but I'm by no stretch of imagination a scholar on Mahabharata, but whatever little I have read, I have found that it's generally a history. I think there is no reason for the Shiva devotees to kind of say this is our book because this is where Lord Shiva is. Again, if you can bring some passages from Mahabharata that really highlight that, then we can discuss further.
Thank you, bro.
No, thank you. All right. Dhritarashtra's past life, Anuradha Mataji, I don't know. It's not mentioned in Mahabharata explicitly. You mentioned that there is a special significance of not drinking water on Nirjala Ekadashi. Can you please explain it? So Bhima had trouble with keeping up fast on Ekadashi, and he went to Vyasadeva. He said to Vyasadeva, I can't do this, so you have to tell me a solution. So Vyasadeva said, just once a year, on one Ekadashi, don't drink water, and in every other Ekadashi, even if you eat grains, they get compensated. So that is the Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi. So,
thank you, Prabhu. I was just wondering if there is anything special significance for not having the water itself. Like, I understood. Okay.
I mean, so for some devotees, like, oh, did I do Ekadashi? Did I not do Ekadashi? What? I'm not sure. Okay, let me do one Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi and kind of, rectify for everything. So that is one aspect. It's been a little Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi is like you can argue back and forth within ISKCON, like why do you guys keep it? Because you do fast for the whole other Ekadashis. It's a personal choice. So on Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi, if you can stay without drinking water, please do so. But if you need to drink water or whatever your body suits you, you should do that. The reason I say it is that if I am going to fast all day long, and then barely I'm able to keep myself alive. And then my rounds are like Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Please don't do it. Please take something and just chant your rounds nicely.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Oh, we have a sharp cutoff at 3. Mataji, Sirisha Mataji.
No Prabhu. I didn't get any news yet.
Please do let me know in case this needs to be used. Then we can have a.
Sure, Prabhu. I can quickly call Ramanandska Prabhu and I'll let you know.
Okay, Aname. Okay, he is what I didn't get your thing. Okay. Oh. So okay. All right. Then in Shanti Parva, Bhishma actually mentions to Yudhishthir that Narayan is ultimate and Shiva is very real. Okay, thank you, Sukarupa Mataji, for that and Ashramada. What is Jaimini Mahabharata mentioned? Sorry.
So sorry, Prabhu. That was me actually. Sukarupa and Ashray Madhav Das.
Yes. Thank you, Ashray Madhav Prabhu. So good to hear from you.
Thank you, Haribol.
Very well. What is Jaimini Mahabharata mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat? Is it one written by Vyasadeva or different one? So Vyasadeva composed Mahabharata and Jaimini spoke Mahabharata again at the snake sacrifice of King Janamejaya. So
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah.
We are good to go for another more couple of minutes, Prabhu. Today there is no other program.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. When Dhritarashtra was not fit to be the king, how was he selected to be the interim king? He wouldn't be fit anyway for that also. Lalita Mataji, that's an excellent question. So there are a couple of Lalitas, and is this Lalita Madhavi Mataji or?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danut Pranam.
Oh, Lalitangi Mataji, Hare Krishna. The world famous Lalitangi Mataji.
Oh no, Prabhuji, I'm ISV dropout case, Prabhuji.
No, it's a satellite center in North Carolina. So. Thank you. So it's an excellent, outstanding question. And that's your question, right, Mataji? So anyway, he was not fit. So why was he selected?
Yeah.
So before we go there, there was a crisis in Hastinapur because there was Chitrangada and Vichitravirya who both died, and the kingdom of Hastinapur had no king. And Bhishma was the most qualified person to lead, but he had taken a vow to not become the king. And Satyavati implored him. Please, you should forget your vow. For my sake, you have taken that vow. I relieve you from that vow. And then my father is not there. And you also said that my children, when they ascend to because if I become the king, then my children won't have a chance at all. But both of my kids are dead now. And then you should become the king. There is no harm in breaking that vow. But Bhishma is firm. And then she thinks of this plan where Vyasadeva is asked to help out for having a king. And then we hear the story of how Dhritarashtra, Vidura, and Pandu were born. When Pandu died, it had to be Dhritarashtra or Vidura. Technically speaking, there were only two people who could lead. Vidura was disqualified because not only he was born from the maidservant's womb, but also he was very sattvic by nature. For Kshatriyas, you need to have that spirit to defend and to protect people. And if you recollect the passage from Srimad Bhagavatam where Duryodhana insulted Vidura with really harsh words, Vidura, he just left. He didn't take up the bow and arrow and started fighting back. So if his own sattvic nature is such that he doesn't even defend his own thing, to rule such a big kingdom would have been a difficult job for Vidura. So by default, it was back to the person they said no in the first place. Either it was Dhritarashtra or no king.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. So that
Thank
was
you for enlightening us through Bhakti Vaibhav or Bhakti Sastri. Somehow, you're getting us to read the scriptures and ponder over it. So we are very grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So here is the thing. What can we do? We have to complete the half more chapter. My request to you is, from next week onwards, I will also stop telling stories and we'll complete the whole chapter. And then if there is time for stories, I'll tell stories, or if not, we'll take question and answers. But but actually, there is no fun without that. But then this is a perpetual problem. We can't complete the chapter, and I have been cursed either ways. You are going, it's like I complete go slowly, and then in the last I rush, they'll say, hey, you're rushing the last. So would it be okay if the devotees complete it on their own and then complete the second chapter? I can just go give a synopsis of the remaining verses before I start the second chapter, and the devotees can read on their own. Is that okay? Or do you want me to go through every verse and we'll have an extra class between now and the second chapter? That's your
Please go through every verse, Prabhuji, please.
I think that is the taste.
I agree with Pranagopika Mataji, what Pranagopi Mataji is telling.
That's going to be hard for you, Prabhuji, because you're naturally a storyteller.
No. Next time I'll make sure that we complete
I want that nectar from you, Prabhuji. Reading we can do, but then in between lines we can't do.
Yes, Prabhuji, actually we have heard so many times telling you Bhagavad Gita, but still it is so fresh, Prabhuji. Like every time we want to listen more and more. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. So at least, so I get this. So just for this first chapter, because it's a chapter that really is important, before you go, we will, at least for this chapter, we'll do synopsis just to begin with for the next class, and then we'll do the second chapter. From the second chapter onwards, I'll time it in such a way. For second chapter, we'll need 2 sessions because it's 72 verses, 23 verses, 46 we couldn't get through. So, I'll do the synopsis, and maybe just for the first chapter, we can quickly go through. I'll read all the verses in just the translations in the beginning of the second chapter, just quickly go through all the verses, and I'll point any important points within 10-15 minutes, and then we'll go to the second chapter. Second chapter needs 2 sessions. So at least that way we can cover up in the second chapter. Is that okay? I'll go through all the verses, but quickly go through, do the translations, and then point out the important things, and then we can do that.
So Prabhu, if we have 4 or 5 months, that will be, we'll have at least 2 classes a month. Some of them have 3 classes a month.
Okay. Yes, Mate.
So then we'll have at least 12 to 13 classes, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, you can see that just today we had the taste of that, because let me put it this way: we have about 350 verses to cover, and approximately, give or take. So, which means if we have to do a lot more verses than we did today, otherwise. If the devotees are okay, I can spend time. It is just you have to have that capacity for hearing. Otherwise, after some time, you'll say this fellow is getting boring. I'm just going to read on my own. Thank you very much. Have a nice
No, Prabhu, you explain it so well, at least. Otherwise, for me though, I cannot understand just by reading. So if you explain and give it, that will be very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. So for the next class, just read. And then I'll go through all of the translations, and we won't do the verses. And then at least there are few important points actually Arjuna mentions. And really one of them is really a nice point. If you can be there for the next class, it's a really nice point that I'll explain, and then we can go to the second chapter. And then second chapter we'll pace in such a way that we complete certain verses, then take questions. In the meanwhile, if you have questions, please start putting it on WhatsApp group. Don't wait, and then we can always address like that. I am so grateful to each and every one of you for taking this time and giving me the association, and more importantly, enriching, purifying, and illuminating your life through your devotion to Krishna, and by reading these books that Srila Prabhupada so carefully gave to us. And I pray that, may you always be attached to Krishna and to reading, explaining, and spreading his message all over the world. So thank you very much. And today also at ISV we have a class. Maybe it's on first chapter of Bhagavad Gita for those who just need to know. So I'm so grateful again. Thank you so very much. Vansha kalpa tarubhayascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha. Did I not address any question? Did anybody had a question that I didn't address? We are good.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have a question.
Yes.
You were saying, so from now until the next time we meet, you wanted us to read just for 15 minutes. How is it exactly that you want us to read?
Every day.
Every day, right. But you want us to read like the shloka?
No. Okay, I'll clarify. So we have 4 to 5 months and we have 350 verses to cover. So if you do 15 minutes of reading every day, then you can cover that portion within that time. That's what I said.
So I guess, Prabhu, it's like they wanted to know just the reading part is like, is it just shloka and translation, or even the purports, I guess?
So if you read 15 minutes every day, shloka, translation, and purport, you should be completing the entire portion of 9 chapters in the next 4 to 5 months. That was the point I was trying to make. Now,
okay.
If I'm working, then or I might be able to read more on the weekend, less on the weekend. If I miss one day, on Wednesdays I am free, I can do 2 hours. So it's all your choice on how you want to read.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
No, thank you. Any other points?
Prabhuji, can you mention in the first chapter any important text and everything, Prabhuji, so that way I can catch up?
Oh, so if you are intrigued about the one, then look up the verse number 36, Mataji. And then we can discuss a little bit on the next thing. And you can maybe we can first form why that verse is really what is so intriguing about that verse. And then,
because this is the first time I'm taking the course, Prabhuji, so that's what I was thinking.
Your name, Mataji?
Anuradha Prabhuji, I'm in Darland.
No, Mataji, Hare Krishna. I couldn't hear, I couldn't make it out. So sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Prabhuji.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, sorry, one question, Prabhuji.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, Prabhu.
No problem.
So are we planning to meet every Saturday, every Sunday, same time, Prabhu?
No, actually, it's every alternate Sundays. The schedule will be sent out, Prabhuji. I am surprised, my apologies that the schedule was not sent out, but it is every alternate Sundays.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. And one more question, what you mentioned about homework. So when you think we're supposed to get our homework, so we have enough time to submit it back?
So usually you do have enough time, we'll let you know, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I have a question about the test. We received like 9 verses, 1 verse each for each chapter. So, yes. So exam will be based on these 9 verses only, or it will be any verses?
Is that Bhuvika Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So Mataji, the exam will have multiple choices, essay questions, and there will be 2 or 3 questions which will ask you to memorize the verses and write them on the paper. So those verses for memorization will come amongst these verses.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right. I'll see you all in 2 weeks' time. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Dandat pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you
Prabhu.
so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sirisha Mataji and all the
Hare
team.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna. Dandavat pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you
Hare
so much,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare
Pranam,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam. Thank you.